On January 23, 2020, the analytics company FICO announced an updated scoring model will be rolled out to lenders in the summer of 2020. This updated model, officially called FICO Score 10 Suite, will have two versions, FICO 10 and FICO 10T. Equifax has already agreed to offer the scoring model to lenders during the 2020 summer rollout, with Experian and TransUnion following suit late in 2020.
Okay, so what does that mean to me? I heard lenders are usually slow to adopt newer credit scoring models anyways. Heck, many lenders still use FICO 8, which came out in 2009. So no big deal, right?
Historically, that is true. Lenders are slow to update their scoring models. However, if you flipped a quarter 5 times and it landed heads every time, would you conclude that it will always end up heads? I'll revisit this answer later.
What are you saying? Do you think lenders will update to FICO 10 right away?
I think there is a strong possibility FICO 10 will be adopted faster than prior versions of FICO models in years past. Let's revisit this topic later and instead take a look at what specifics credit industry insiders are saying about the new FICO 10 suite and how it might affect your score. I'll pro-con FICO 10 from the consumer perspective as well as the lenders and FICO's perspective. The prior features of FICO 8 and 9 models will carry over to FICO 10, but FICO 10 will have more emphasis on certain borrower activity to help lenders mitigate risk. First, let's go over the repeating sound bites that have been making the rounds on the usual financial news outlets. It's been reported that FICO 10 will create a bigger gap between those with good scores and those with bad scores. Financial news outlets are cited providing examples with credit scores of 600, possibly going down 20 points, and scores of 680, possibly going up 20 points. Another soundbite is that FICO 10 will judge borrowers more harshly that use personal consolidation loans to wipe out their credit card debt and go right back to inflating the balances on those cards. I covered this method of debt consolidation in my video on credit utilization, except I emphasize not playing it as a shell game and advise the balance should be paid down. Additionally, FICO 10 is alleged to judge borrowers even more harshly for recent missed payments.
In that video, didn't you call personal consolidation loans a quote-unquote safer credit product to preserve a credit score during periods of high utilization though? So that's no longer an option with FICO 10?
Correct. I refer to personal consolidation loans as a quote-unquote safer credit product because prior scoring models didn't punish borrowers as harshly when moving their credit card debt to a consolidation loan. This method allowed borrowers to shield their high credit card balances behind the loan. High utilization on loan balances did not lower scores as much as having high utilization on credit cards. Well, that's all going away with FICO 10, provided the borrower is going back to their usual ways of racking up debt on their credit cards after those balances are consolidated. To be clear, borrowers that can demonstrate paying down their debt balances with personal consolidation loans will still be judged favorably because they are reducing their overall debt, which should be every borrower's objective.
Meh, makes sense, I guess, from the lender's perspective. We can't have too many people consolidating to hide their card balances, then racking up more debt on the cards right after. It's a vicious cycle that doesn't have a happy ending. But it stinks that it's one less tool for us consumers to use to preserve a higher credit score. I remember reading consumer debt hit an all-time high of $14 trillion from the New York Fed's quarterly report in late spring 2019. Seems we're already heading towards an unhappy ending, which could explain the reasoning for an updated FICO model.
Very true. Don't forget that the average credit score in the US has inched up to above 700 for the first time ever. Some lenders, along with the government, feel consumer borrowing has already hit a critical point, and perhaps these scores are not truly reflective of a borrower's true risk level. It's becoming easier to hit 700 than in years past due to apps like Credit Karma, Experian, and NerdWallet, to name a few, which spell out all the steps to attain a 700 score. One last important soundbite was specific to FICO 10T. This intrusive model looks at a borrower's balance history, or credit utilization history. The potential effect this has on consumers' credit scores cannot be understated. On the upside, one news source noted that sudden spikes in credit utilization would not affect scores as dramatically because FICO 10T focuses more on the overall 24-month trend, and not just the current period the way prior FICO versions do. However, I am a bit skeptical on score changes being less dramatic. I'll come back to this point later. Go to any credit site on improving scores and you'll see the same advice with the same chart. When it comes to credit utilization, the advice is to get the balance the lender reports to the consumer credit reporting agencies as low as possible. That part does not change. However, the part about how credit utilization is taken as a snapshot without balances from prior periods will change with FICO Score 10 Suite, specifically with FICO 10T. It breaks down like this. Under the older FICO models, a lender runs a credit check. Specific to credit utilization, that credit check will gather info from one of the consumer credit reporting agencies, or all three agencies in the case of Capital One, on the applicant's last reported credit balances. It's important to note that older FICO models only examine the last reported balance. The difference with FICO 10T is that this model goes back 24 prior periods and aggregates all those balances. This process generates trended data specific to credit utilization and indicates which direction the applicant's risk level is going. If the history shows balances increasing, then the score will drop. If the history shows decreasing balances, the score improves. If balances don't change, the score stays the same. It's been reported through many news outlets that the supposed changes to scores will fluctuate as much as 20 points in either direction. As mentioned earlier, scores shouldn't have the same dramatic shift as under previous FICO versions. It should be noted that scores are supposed to have a more gradual, slower change stemming from credit utilization under FICO 10T. Again, I have my doubts here, which I'll go over shortly. Now that I've gone over all the stuff you can find on every other news outlet about the new FICO 10 model, let's get into Cap's opinion segment. This is my take on the new FICO 10 model and my predictions on how it will affect consumers. Again, these are only predictions and are speculative. First, I 100% agree with analyzing personal consolidation loans more closely to reduce scores going forward, specifically for consumers that go back to their old habits and accumulate more debt on those same cards. I also agree with judging consumers with recent missed payments more harshly. It's been reported that scores won't have these quick, huge changes like they do with older FICO models. But as stated earlier, I'm very suspect on this being applied, as I feel it will be exploited to benefit lenders more than consumers. But overall, good job FICO on both fronts regarding recent missed payments and higher credit utilization with regards to consolidation loans. Second, FICO 10 is supposed to have a polarizing effect on scores. This means it should get a little better for those who are responsible with credit. It also means scores should get worse for those who are not. The over-under consensus on fluctuations was reported to be 20 points. Time will tell if this will be applied fairly to both consumers and lenders. What I feel is really happening with this polarized approach is FICO and lenders are trying to mitigate risk as consumers' credit scores are reaching higher levels on average as we have moved further from the 2008 recession. All those bankruptcies and collection accounts are falling off consumer credit reports now that we're in the 2020 decade. For another segment of US consumers, remember FICO Ultra and Experian Boost? Those two new scoring models were developed to migrate a segment of consumers with little to no credit history into the world of lending by generating a score from payments for utilities, insurance, rent, and even how much money they kept in their checking accounts. Now we have more consumers with improved scores walking around, but lenders had no way of really knowing how worthy they were since they skirted in under these newer models that analyze their data differently. On the upside, lenders had more data, which they call alternative data, on their applicants with these new models. But lenders need a truer assessment of the borrower's risk level. While it's true the average score of a U.S. consumer has improved to a historic high of over 700, lenders, as well as the government, have concerns over the validity of these historically higher scores and do not want another recession. In contrast, consumer debt is also at an all-time high. I made a video on credit utilization 2 months before FICO announced FICO 10 and predicted lenders would eventually be able to see historical credit score data like prior periods of credit utilization. That realization will come in the summer of 2020.
So how do we as borrowers know if we're doing better or worse under FICO 10?
The short answer is to not have any missed payments. Always keep the balances that lenders report as low as possible every month. Keep accounts open as long as possible. Try to have one installment account or loan to go with at least several revolving accounts or credit cards. If these conditions apply, then consumers should be slightly better off under the newer model. If there are recent missed payments or debt balances are seen increasing over time, then scores will be slightly worse.
I remember your video on credit utilization. What is it about this new FICO 10 model that's different from what's said in your video? Is it just recent missed payments and the balances of prior months that are now analyzed that are different?
Yes, that brings up the third vital point, which is historical credit balances or trended data according to FICO's press release. I'm referring to the new analysis feature of FICO 10T, which looks at the prior 24-month periods of credit balances. In my opinion, this is where the crux of importance lies. It's important to distinguish the difference between the severity of change in scores versus how long it takes for scores to change. In other words, how much versus how long. Under prior FICO models, the impact of one bad month was severe and immediate when it came to credit utilization. This newer model's scoring system is supposed to be slower and more gradual.
Sounds simple to me. Older versions are quick. This newer one is slow. Is that all there is to it?
Short answer, maybe. Let's apply a pro-con analysis from both a consumer and lender perspective. The pro side is that scores are not going down as much as they used to, based on one bad month of credit utilization in this new FICO Score 10 suite. There will need to be multiple months of elevated balances being reported for significant score changes to occur. How many months is unknown at this point. The flip side to this is that scores won't go back up once balances are reported as paid. It will likely require multiple months of low reported balances. Again, we don't know how many months it will take. What I predict is that consumers will have longer rebound times to improve scores compared to how much quicker those same scores drop from higher utilization. Here's an excellent example of a responsible borrower who has no missed payments and has many lenders reporting low balances every month. This person has been doing this for years and has an outstanding score under older FICO models. They decide to take advantage of a new credit card offer and open a new account with a huge credit line with 0% APR for 15 months. Within 1 month, the card is at 70% utilization. Under previous FICO models, the score would take a huge immediate drop. Once the balance is paid off, which will happen when the 0% promotion ends, the score will immediately rebound once the balance is updated to the consumer credit reporting agency's under the prior FICO models. However, under the newer FICO 10 model, specifically FICO 10T, the effect of high utilization remains after the high balance is reduced. Exactly how long is unknown. After all, it's powered by algorithms, which never spell out how specific conditions affect scores and just provide a generic reason code explaining what is currently affecting the score the most. I remember seeing time since account opening is too short, along with too many recent inquiries appear as reason codes even though my score was 850 using FICO 8 through TransUnion. Point is, credit algorithms look at everything, even if you have a perfect score. These algorithms don't get into the specifics of why, how long, how much, or anything else, nor do the lenders. Time will tell how severe scores will drop and how long it takes for them to rebound with FICO 10. I really hope it's balanced, but I can see how it could be skewed more to the lender's favor. The real concern here is how long a score will take to rebound, especially in the case of a responsible borrower like in our example. An 800 score could drop down to just above 700 for high utilization under previous FICO models on just one card alone, despite the borrower having many other cards with low reported balances. If it only takes 2 to 3 months under FICO 10T, then okay, I could see that as reasonable. But if it takes 6 months, 12 months, over a year even, no way. The only saving grace is that it may take just as long for the score to go down as it does to come back up, but I don't see that as a positive either. Then you have to remember the algorithm. It's not very specific in explaining exactly why a score dropped. It simply spits out a generic reason code and the consumer is left to figure it out. It would be better if FICO provided some timeline regarding credit utilization history, preferably a reasonable one, which outlays how long it takes for consumer scores to rebound instead of playing the algorithm card, which applies a blanket reason code, which I expect won't address this new important feature of FICO 10T. Another concern is figuring out how much importance lenders will give when analyzing prior balance history. This potentially high level of scrutiny is automatically applied with FICO 10T's intrusive algorithm and could make things difficult for consumers despite having an immaculate credit history. The upside here is strictly for lenders, as they get a truer picture of the borrower's history based on this trended data. Credit cards are the biggest source of revenue, so I see this as a huge win for lenders. Sadly, consumers lose out with this new feature for FICO 10T. My argument for this is best illustrated with my example. Under the older models, the borrower knew where they stood and had more influence over their score because the effect of credit utilization was just as immediate as it was severe. With FICO 10T, it's been said that sudden increases in balances won't have dramatic drops in scores. Well, how much less dramatic will it be? Also, how long will the effect last once the reported balance or balances are lowered? Time will tell, but my dubious outlook doesn't see this as a positive change for consumers. It could be argued that a newer, unfavorable model for consumers was overdue when you look at the history of FICO models. Consumers have seen their scores creep upward as these newer models have implemented more consumer-friendly features like disregarding small collection balances, allowing rent payments to be factored, medical collection balances having less weight, collections paid in full won't adversely affect scores, and so on. There are other events outside of FICO that have benefited consumers, like the Card Act of 2009. Then there is time, specifically the amount of time that has passed since the Great Recession of 2008, which has allowed many derogatory marks to fall off consumers' credit histories. Given all these conditions around improved consumer scores, a more stringent FICO model is necessary.
Oh crap, I guess we have reached a tipping point. Sounds like this new FICO 10 stuff will be implemented sooner than prior versions.
Historically, lenders have been slow to adopt newer FICO models. Many non-mortgage lenders still use some targeted version of FICO 8, but FICO 9's presence has grown in recent years. Some lenders, like Wells Fargo, even provide free scores using FICO 9 through Experian. The looming question is, how long will it take for lenders to come around on FICO 10? Bloggers and credit experts might say years based on previous FICO versions. But again, if you flipped a coin that landed heads 5 times straight, does that mean it will always be heads? Take a look at the stats provided by FICO in their press release around FICO 10. Substantial claims are made, which include a possible reduction in defaults for cards by as much as 10%, along with a 9% reduction for auto loans compared to FICO 9. There's an even higher possible reduction for default mortgages that claims as much as 17%. I wouldn't be surprised to see non-mortgage lenders use it within a year of its release, given the more comprehensive insight provided, especially with FICO 10T. The mortgage industry is still predominantly using decades-old versions of FICO models. FICO 10T's automated review of the prior 2-year periods of credit balances may alleviate a lot of work for underwriters in this industry and prove beneficial in reducing processing time for mortgage lenders. In my opinion, this isn't a game changer for homebuyers because most mortgage lenders conduct a more thorough review. The real beneficiary would be mortgage lenders with a reduced underwriting time with regards to credit balance history. In review, FICO has scheduled a new scoring model called FICO Score 10 Suite. It has 2 base versions, FICO 10 and FICO 10T. The latter has an impressively intrusive model that provides lenders a more comprehensive look at consumers' reported credit balances over the prior 2 years. This new scoring model will reward responsible borrowers and punish less responsible ones by increasing the gap up to 20 points in either direction. Consolidation loans will be analyzed more carefully and will lower scores provided the borrower's debt levels continue to rise. Those who practice good credit habits will be rewarded. Those who don't will see lower scores. It's been reported scores won't have heavy fluctuations based on one bad month of higher balances compared to previous FICO models. But we don't know how long this slow and gradual approach will take to right itself once those higher balances are lowered. Widespread use around FICO 10 is not expected according to financial sources. I have my doubts on this one given how consumer credit scores have steadily increased over the years. Lenders and other government agencies must have assurance in knowing these scores are not overinflated. This is FICO's answer to that problem. I do expect this version to be implemented much quicker than prior versions. As we move forward with credit scores, the importance of knowing specific details of why borrowers aren't getting the best rates or being denied credit is growing. Traditionally, lenders will provide a reason for denial, which is generated by the credit scoring model's algorithm. Lenders also provide information on which credit bureau provided the data for the decision. It's my opinion that we're at a point where lenders should be required to disclose which specific targeted FICO model they're using, given the developments of this latest model. Until then, see my video on credit utilization, which has useful, applicable information on scoring models prior to FICO Score 10 Suite. If you have any questions around FICO 10, hit me up in the comments anytime. What are you waiting for? Hit it, Steve.